Well, good morning, security gang, and welcome back to the CyberHub Podcast, episode 1011. We've got a packed show for all of y'all today. Again, on the road, we'll be back in the studio for Monday's show. Today's November 13th, 2025. Let's get right into the show this morning, folks, because, I'm running late on scheduling, like I'm recording this a little bit later than I'd like to. Coffee cup cheers to everyone tuning in and watching this morning. Let's get with this. Synnovis, which is a UK NHS pathology, notifying that the 2024 ransomware from the Kaleen ransomware attack included NHS numbers, names, dates of birth, and even in some cases, test results. They're notifying NHS organizations, not even the patients directly, and they're expecting those organizations' notifications to conclude by next Friday. That's the 21st of November. The 2024 outage caused 800 canceled operations, 700 canceled outpatient appointments across London hospitals, leading to, at the time, what we discussed here on the show as being something extremely, extremely significant in nature for the Brits. And again, this goes into the idea of long-tail regulatory exposures for hospitals and suppliers, patient safety risk during some of these outages, including targeted phishing against patients and even clinicians. And if you're in healthcare and you see these types of breaches and you go, what could I do? How do we mitigate these types of attacks, especially this ransomware types of attacks? Well, you've got a valid like in this specific case, this was a third-party breach. So, you want to hunt for data sets in spam or phishing campaigns. You should definitely take a look at what your resiliency plan looks like. All of that comes into play for the UK. China is awfully quiet, which is really nervous. And now they've taken the playbook and going, the US is hacking us, and they're behind the largest Bitcoin theft in history, allegedly. So coverage across Chinese media is accusing the US of cyber activity tied to Bitcoin theft, part of an ongoing information ops narrative within China. Details are light and contested. So again, the Chinese are really now trying to play victim locally within their folks and look, big bad President Trump and the US, they came in and they hacked nearly $13 billion worth of Bitcoins from the Lubine mining pool and seized them. And so that's why we have all these issues and all this stuff happening. And so the US obviously denying these types of attacks. This happened back in 2020, by the way. So this happened during Trump's version 1.0. Not 2.0, but China definitely kind of trying to build some sympathy to the slowdown because of the trade barriers and the trade war and the tariffs that Trump has slapped on China. The economic situation in China is terrible. And now the Chinese are starting to kind of use cyber attacks local in the media in order to try to gain sympathy of it's us against them type of mentality, typical of communist propaganda, by the way, very, very much so there. All right, we'll continue with the U.S. strike force to combat Southeast Asian scam compounds. The U.S. announcing a strike force plus sanctions aimed at scam compounds driving global fraud in Myanmar. Treasury actions target groups and facilitators behind mass like pig butchering investment scams. There's going to be a lot of short-term disruption there, so we will see a decrease as some of these will try to rebrand and find ways to operate in the shadows. So again, keep your eyes out to it. Again, most of these scam centers target specifically Southeast Asian nations. They're targeting people that speak Chinese or Thai or in the Philippines and so forth. They're not really targeting the U.S., although some of them do target the U.S. But this is definitely a kind of a bigger approach from the U.S. there. We'll continue with this next story this morning, folks. Google filing a lawsuit to disrupt the Chinese phishing platform behind the U.S. toll payment SMS wave, including domain seizures and infrastructure disruptions. So again, this will end up getting taken down. The courts will allow this to take down, and then they'll rebuild it somewhere else, and we'll do this all over again. You've got to disrupt it. These are the fake, kind of like, hey, you got to pay this right here. And there's scamming people out of toll money, essentially, and so forth. And again, the Chinese are behind it. So Google supports new U.S. policies, as well as there's a Scam Act that establishes a national strategy to counter scam compounds and impose sanctions on those operators. We just talked about that a second ago. So you kind of see how all of this is coming together. In the UK, there's nothing they love more than writing laws, passing those laws, and then fining people for those laws. Well, now the new UK legislation would expand critical infrastructure scope, set mandatory standards for MSP and MSSP-like providers, and even require rapid reporting, 24 hours initial, 72-hour detailed, as well as turnover-based penalties. So now there's a new compliance uplift for essential service operators and their key suppliers, which is likely going to increase the workload as well as audit requirements. I don't know that it necessarily builds out a more secure type of environment. All they're doing is they're adding more people under the umbrella, and then they're going to add in more audit capabilities that they have to comply with. So expect costs to go up if you operate in the UK, as more and more companies will have to cover the compliance cost by passing off that cost to you, the customer. All right, we'll go to OpenAI in a New York Times court case, which is now having a dispute over ChatGPT retention. Coverage indicates a court order affecting how some ChatGPT data is retained amid the New York Times lawsuit. Specifics are still fluid and contested. The OpenAI received a court preservation order on May 13th, directing the governor to retain all output log data that would be otherwise deleted, regardless of user deletion request or even privacy regulation requirement. Again, this is a legal fight over the trademark and kind of who does what in AI and so forth. A very interesting lawsuit over copyright cases and data preservation demands. We'll see how this pales out. This is going to have significant impacts downstream as this case continues. Let's move to some vulnerabilities because we have a whole bunch of those this morning. The Citrix NetScaler ADC and Gateway cross-site scripting patch is now available. A new cross-site scripting issue when NetScaler ADC Gateway can enable session hijack against users of the AAA or Gateway VS servers. It's fixed in supported trains. That's version 14.1-56.73 and 13.1-60.32. End of life trains still remain vulnerable, and so you want to make sure you get those either patched up, mitigated, or taken offline altogether. We continue with some of the Patch Tuesday stuff we missed here, so let's go right through this. Ivanti is fixing their endpoint manager. We talked about this yesterday. That's a path traversal and deserialization. Zoom patching multiple private ESC and client-side bugs across their platform. So again, you want to prioritize internet-exposed EPMs on Ivanti, and then Zoom admins and SSO and SCIM all require updates on the Zoom side of the house as well. Chip makers Intel, AMD, and NVIDIA also joining the Patch Tuesday mayhem with 60 vulnerabilities all in total. Intel publishing fixes spanning firmware drivers and software components. Details are varied by each, but however, several high severity issues could affect enterprise fleets. So you want to make sure you get these taken care of as well. AMD publishing 6 advisors describing 14 total vulnerabilities, and NVIDIA for their end publishing 4 new advisories covering a total of 6 vulnerabilities impacting their AI products. You want to make sure you get these patched up. On the ICS front, Siemens, Schneider Electric, Rockwell Automation, and Aviv have all joining the Patch Tuesday advisories with coordinated advisories there. Siemens publishing 6 new advisories. One of them covers 2 vulnerabilities in the Comos plant engineering software, including a critical code execution flaws. Rockwell Automation publishing 5 new advisories on November 11th, each covering high severity vulnerabilities found in various products. The company is also informing customers of its Verve Asset Manager OT security platform that the product is affected by high severity access control issues that can allow unauthorized read-only users to tamper with other user accounts via API. Aviva publishing 2 new advisories on Tuesday. One of them describes a high severity persistent cross-site scripting flaw that could be exploited for privilege escalation. And Schneider also has a vulnerability that's impacting the EcoStruxure, Machine SCADA Expert, and Proface Blue Open Studio products. You want to make sure you get these patched up ASAP. Oh, sorry there, folks. All right. An advanced threat actor exploited the critical vulnerabilities in the Citrix bleed. That's something that's taken place right now. That's a 0-day exploitation. that Amazon is pointing out across Netrix ADC and Gateway CVE 2025-5777 and then 20337. So attackers are using a custom web shell like an identity audit action that injects into a Tomcat thread that employs DES encoded traffic and requires special headers, leaving minimal forensics altogether. So folks, just stay tight there as more and more stuff is taking place here within the Citrix realm as well. And finally, an Army officer with Indo-Pacific experience is emerging as the potential Cyber Command NSA pick. A senior U.S. military official with no digital warfare experience is emerging as a top contender to lead U.S. Cyber Command and the NSA. President Trump considering Army Lieutenant General Joshua Reed, the number 2 at the U.S. Indo-Pacific Command, for the dual hat leadership role atop of the two entities, according to multiple people familiar with the search currently going on by President Trump and his team. So this would bring someone more with Indo-Pacific experience into that part of the world, which will go a long way, since the part of the world that they're most concerned about from a cyber perspective is China, and that's where the focus is. Having someone with that kind of experience only goes to strengthen the posture the U.S. is trying to put on militarily to ensure that China doesn't encroach on Taiwan, and then that it keeps China at bay. So there's that. That's it for our show this morning. We ran right through this. I know it was fast, but I am running late this morning. So this was a good practice test. Thank you all for tuning in. Make sure to subscribe to tomorrow's weekly summary, Saturday's article, all available at cyberhubpodcast.com. Until then, have a great weekend. Have a great rest of your day, y'all. And most importantly, stay cyber safe.
We love feedback, so make sure to connect with us on social media and subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast listening platform.